So let's meet the man that I interviewed. I interviewed George. The man that you see is not an actual image of him, nor is this man's name George. But that is the pseudonym I will go with, and this is the photo I will use whenever talking specifically about George, which I will be using pretty much all the time. Anyways, so George, he's about 25 as of this recording. And he was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome in the first grade around 2002, 2003, sometime around there. And Asperger's syndrome is now technically qualified under the autism spectrum, but it's, for the sake of simplicity, I will be referring to it as Asperger's since that is what he was officially diagnosed with. So, growing up, we mainly talked about his elementary school, and we definitely talked a bit about higher grades, but since I am focusing more on like K to 5 for what I'm going to be teaching, I focused more primarily on that. But George grew up in like Salt Lake City, Utah, and a little bit southern, more downtown Salt Lake City. And he was there for a good chunk of his younger years. And while he was there, he went to a couple... he went to a school that was farther than the one that was actually right next to his place because of some inclusion program. But long story short, he was, in his words, one of the 20 white kids in a school of about like 400 black kids. And quoting him exactly again, and as a white kid with autism, that did not go down well. So the three themes or things that he did to help him succeed. Well, first off, getting help from teachers definitely helped. He had some good teachers. Secondly, finding what he was actually interested in. And thirdly, he understood what he needed and what he should and could do to help himself to be able to continue to do things. Alrighty, so firstly, he had some help from some good teachers and good faculty members as well. Something that he talked about a bit was, again, with being one of 20 white kids in a primarily black school where he also had autism. In talking about elementary school, he got bullied a lot, and so he would end up kind of hiding in the nurse's room a few times just because of either he would be put there because of what the other kids would do to him, or he would just go there just to hide because he just couldn't deal with it, and there wasn't exactly enough support all the time to be preventative. It was more of a reactive support, sadly. But he was able to get help from some teachers and get help from some of the staff to help him with really just getting motivation to do work. He talks about how, he says that he knew that the teachers were there to help him and to care for him and to help push him forward, specifically mentioning, high love, high expectation, and that definitely for him, it worked because that helped push him forward, and it didn't give him an excuse to be like, yeah, well, I'm not smart, I can't do this, his teachers knew that he could, so they pushed him to do that, which is honestly really good.
The second thing that really helped him was him finding what worked for him, what he liked. Of course, we all tend to gravitate towards some subjects a bit more than others. Like for me, in elementary school, I loved gym, I loved music, I I despised English, and I had some fun with some science stuff. But that was just kind of life for me. For him, he really liked science and he really liked math. And so when he was doing those, he would be able to really focus in and really get ahead. One part of what he believes was part of his IEP plan was he was really into meteorology and weather and all that fun stuff. And so they had a whole subject that, according to him, seemed a bit longer than normal on meteorology, where they had a few more projects that were hands-on, which worked really well for him, and he was able to really help him focus and enjoy what he was actually doing. The third thing that really helped him was him finding what worked for him and him kind of knowing what he needed. During the interview, he talked about how he would sometimes walk to school and walk to elementary or middle school, and that was 2.5-ish miles away, but to him, he could get overstimulated by lots of noise and just too much going on, and we all know what a school bus is like. Lots of small students, small children, just being a little hectic. It's loud. It's never normally a super quiet area. So he would take the time for him to just go and be by himself and get to school, and that would help him, in his own words, it would help him get into focus. It would let him think about things, just kind of process what was going to go on throughout the day. And that also really helped him. And he had a few other things like that. And again, as I was talking about earlier, he would sometimes go to the nurse's room to go to one of the beds and just kind of lie down and kind of relax, refresh, and be able to get back into focus, into work mode kind of a thing. And that really worked for him. And overall, he had a bunch of little habits and techniques that he knew about, that his teachers knew about, that his parents knew about, that they would utilize to help him be able to move from one spot to another. So, to talk a little bit about the culture of the area that George grew up in, with the schooling culture, just overall in general, assuming he grew up in the Salt Lake City School District, or the SLCSD, it has a very strong focus on education with children, with all sorts of things. It has multiple programs. It has lots of community events. They have they both have commitment to equity. They have a good history of their education. They have Head Start programs, multiple community partnerships. They have a big focus on STEM, of course, and lots of community learning centers. And they have, and this is all from the Salt Lake City School District's website. But they have, it's a good area that also has programs, like I mentioned earlier, to include students of different groups and of different background, sorry. And all these it's a good area to foster and raise up a new student. And continuing on though, students with Asperger's syndrome can either have great success or kind of like your average student success. Those with Asperger's generally tend to have normal or average, per se, IQ to a higher IQ, or what we call gifted. But overall, in the context of school success, what makes it easier or harder for students of having Asperger's syndrome is really just if they're getting the assistance that they need, mainly with being able to do the work and being motivated. Because majority of cases, they will find it harder to focus or actually be engaged in the work of anything in school unless they're given another reason why, or they're already into the subject. And that's hard sometimes. It's hard to get a student to really want to do something unless you can also connect with them, because that's another thing that we've talked a bunch about in class, is if you can't connect with a student, then you can't really do much. You know, we all have that right to education, but our rights in education, we're talking about this student, if this student needs extra time to do this test, give him extra time to do this test. That's what you gotta do. And doing those things can help and will help a student succeed. That's just how it is. And talking now about the other population with the same problem is, for the most part, minus being in a different location and with a slightly different school and having being bullied specifically by some kids, overall George had a very similar trend. It was pretty simple, pretty standard per se. And of course, there's strategies that really help George just grow and to be able to succeed. And it's honestly the main strategy that really helped him, that can help others, is, I know it might sound like a cop-out or too simple, but knowing what you like and what works is honestly the best strategy. Of course, if the student and the teacher know what works and can figure out what works, that's where it all has to go. Because with George, he liked doing things. He liked kind of hands-on activities, and that really clicked with him. And so if teachers can find those activities that can really click, really just work for other students, that can really help them grow and succeed a lot easier. Another thing, George, he wasn't an English language learner. He didn't grow up living really in poverty, and he didn't really have, as far as we know, as far as I interviewed him, he didn't really have anything else other than having Asperger's and being in a predominantly black school, which brought some interesting and unique challenges. But it's really just, he found his way slowly but surely through the programs that the school was doing, and he was able to find his way. And other students with similar problems and different problems can eventually find their way. Some may take much longer, but it is possible with the right help. And just finishing off here, because I have my notes on another screen to my right, which is what I'm reading out from. How can we empower students through literacy and technology to have a more multicultural perspective? It really is simple, because we have nowadays so much technology to be able to do all sorts of things. We could practically do full country tours sitting in the own comfort of our living room as we're drinking some hot cocoa or something. We really have to have the students experience things, get them to read books from different cultures, get them to hear from people that are from those cultures, have them interact with it, not just see it and hear about it, but have them interact. That can really help a student be like, oh, I understand this now. This is really cool. And it's pretty simple in the end. And of course, we have to make an environment where we're all friendly to be able to do that as well. Because, George, he was a white child with autism in a primarily black school. In his own words, that was not a good mix. He was bullied and picked on a lot, and that's not something that is really conducive to learning. I'm pretty sure we all know that bullying is not helpful, but if we can make our schools bully-free and loving, like where we actually care about each other, that can really help us to grow and progress so much better than any other program can, really. In the end, I learned that working with students, with children with Asperger's or high-functioning autism or what have you, definitely it can be a little bit of a struggle sometimes. But that's okay. As teachers, as educators, our job is to help the students grow, is to help them go forward. It's kind of our whole point. We're there to teach them so they can move forward in the world. And keep taking it into a multicultural perspective, there is all sorts of different people in the world, and knowing that just because two different students have the same problem, like say two different students have Asperger's, it can be wildly different. It's not one size fits all at all. And keeping that in mind, my teaching practice, really, I just have to make sure that I am inclusive. I have to make sure that I can help the student feel comfortable and motivated. And honestly, like, what I've learned is that we have to have the other students know as well. We can't just not let them know what's going on. I mean, of course, there is a limit to everything, of course. But if the other students know what's going on, they can help as well. And that way, it can really become a community of learning and of students helping each other. And yeah, that's about it. Thanks. I know this went slightly longer than 15 minutes, but I hope you enjoyed. Anyways, bye. Thanks for working with me this semester. Bye.